Welcome to Sensible Center's podcast, Democracy 2.0. Kevin's a left-of-center guy from Wisconsin, and Bob's a right-of-center guy from Tennessee. But we both believe our political system is broken and in need of reform. In Democracy 2.0, we explore the issues facing the U.S., why our representatives are no longer serving the will of the people, and what movements and solutions are out there. It's time for a reboot. It's time for Democracy 2.0. Hey, Bob. How's it going?
Hey, Kevin. You got to take it easy on me tonight. We're in mourning down here in Tennessee.
I know. I was going to say, condolences with Dolly Parton passing,
Yeah.
I saw people lining up outside of her estate. Is that kind of close to you?
Yeah, she did not live terribly far from me. Actually, the hospital she died in was a few blocks away from where I work, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Too bad. She was pretty solid person.
Yeah. I mean, she was a good person and quite an entertainer. So,
Yep.
unfortunately, but Willie Nelson is still around.
He is still around. Although we've hit 2 deaths in the last 2 days. He's still got one celebrity death to go here, I would think, in the next week or so.
Are you counting Tim Curry? Is that who you're
Yes,
counting?
you got it. Tim Curry.
Yeah, I saw that today, too. Deb's a big Rocky Horror Picture Show fan. We always have to watch it around Halloween time. I don't know if that caught your generation or not.
When I think of Tim Curry, and this is ridiculous, I know because he was in a lot of things, but I think of Home Alone 2. So I watch him every year at
Oh,
Christmas.
that's true. He did the Home Alone 2 thing.
Yeah. And so Macaulay Culkin's mom also, right, died. Or mom, the actress, can't think of her name right now, the Canadian lady. What was her name?
Fairly recently?
Yes, in the last
Oh, really?
6 months. Oh, you know her.
I don't think those two are related.
Well,
No,
they were in the movie together.
Oh, they were. Oh,
They were
not
in the
his
movie.
not his real mom.
No, not his
movie
real
mom.
mom. His movie mom.
Catherine
the lady
O'Hara.
yeah, there you go, Catherine O'Hara.
I thought you were talking
All
about
right.
his real mom. Not the character Kevin. His name was Kevin in there, right?
That's right.
I do remember. I'm not a big fan of those movies for some reason. They sort of missed me.
Yeah,
I think I was too old by then.
I was probably my oldest daughter's age when those movies came out. You know, I was around 10-ish. And so I enjoy watching the first and the second one around Christmas time with them every year.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. R.I.P. Dolly. And I think we have a celebration. We've passed the $40 trillion mark.
We did.
We're still not
in
in default.
record time.
And I'm wondering if you've talked to your daughters and told them that they personally owe the rich neighbor down the street, $116,000.
Well, I started Trump accounts for them.
All right, good.
So they'll be able to pay off maybe a tenth of that by the time we
if
get
they're
there.
duly invested, yeah.
Yeah.
They're in good shape. Do you talk to debt with them at all, or realize what we're doing to their future?
I try to explain topics to them when it comes up, but I don't sit them down and speak that. And it's kind of sad, actually, when I think about it. 'Cause I remember watching the news with my grandfather when I was their age a lot. And when they were real young, I watched the news all the time. But over the last 3 to 5 years, I hardly watch it anymore. It's not news, right? It's opinion. So I try not to. So they probably don't get as much exposure as they should anymore, or as I think they should. But we'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, it's helpful to start exposing them to that stuff. I think a lot of people, young people, just zone out of that and kind of figure there's nothing they could do. But
Yeah,
when they do that, we go nuts.
at their age now, what we'll do if we're in a walk around the neighborhood, my daughter will be like, "Dad, ask me questions," right? So I'll try to ask her questions, civics or social issues or science, physics, see if she can get the answer, right? Some of it's probably a little tougher for her, but it gets her thinking.
Right.
But yeah, when it comes to like politics and things, I can tell she gets some of that from school, and generally it's a conservative spin down here, even at their age.
It's shocking.
Yeah, yeah. But
Kids are talking on the street corner about politics.
yeah,
Bus stop.
somehow middle of the day yesterday, right after Dolly died, all Abigail and all her classmates knew it.
That's
And
crazy.
it's just, the internet nowadays, I guess.
Yep. All right, so what are we talking about tonight? Tonight, as we've explained, we're sharing, going back and forth with topics, and I picked two that are have been in the news, I guess, over the last 6 months. Um, they both deal with reforming our democracy and in different ways. So first, I want to talk about the SAVE Act, and I think hopefully all of our listeners have heard about it. I would say that this one's been in the news more than anything. SAVE Act has to do kind of generally, and we'll get into the specifics here in regards to ID, voter ID. I think that's that's kind of the easiest way to sum it up. But we'll get into the technicalities and kind of the impetus behind this a little bit. Do you know what the SAVE Act stands for? Washington has a bureau of acronyms. There's 300 people in the bureau of acronyms. They just come up with acronyms for all these different acts and government agencies. Do you know what the SAVE Act stands
That
for,
is a
Bob?
great question. I actually, let me think. Let me try.
Well, all right, S. What's the S stand for?
Save.
No, safeguard.
Okay, safeguard.
All right,
A.
A. That
It's
should
going
be
to be
easy.
America or American.
All right, American, you're on a roll. V. This
It
should be easy.
does involve voting.
Voter, yes. And
Save
E.
American or safeguard American voter. Efficiency doesn't make sense. How about
Everyone's tuning off now.
yeah,
Eligibility.
eligibility.
Let's go with
We'll
eligibility.
just cut that space out and make
That's
me sound smart.
That's the SAVE Act. And I think everyone kind of heard that our dear president threatened not to sign bills before that the Senate passed the SAVE Act. The
Hmm.
House has passed this act, and Trump called on the Republican senators to pass the SAVE Act. I forgot what was
Of
up
all places
that
for
he
it to
was
not
threatening.
pass, it's the Senate. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and he wants them to do away with the filibuster to pass it because the Democrats aren't on board with this.
Terrible idea.
So I guess the question is, what's the critical emergency that we have that we need this particular act to save our democracy? Um, like, sort of, why do we need it now? Clearly, we've done without it up until this point, right? So what is it solving? What would you say, Bob? This is the purpose of this act
To
is
boil it down, it's trust in the elections.
trust.
Yep.
So and the trust in the non-trust in this elections have come from where?
Yeah, I know where you're leading here, right? You're going to tell me it's going to come from the Republicans.
Well, one particularly, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. There's been lack of trust since at least Gore and probably prior to Gore.
I would say I would say we have a history in this country of it,
Yeah,
right? I mean, if I'm not going to go back and state something from the 1820s, but I think even maybe our second election when Adams and Jefferson were going after each other and things like that. I think there were questions in regards to election integrity. So I think I think given that we're a free country and at least now pretty much everyone has the right to vote, um, that there are questions in regards to who's actually voting, right?
it's not just the ID that I think is concerning to people, right? I think voter ID, while something like 80% of America wants it, it's not the only concern. The other concern is outside influence, outside money in our election process, and then of course the vulnerability of the electronic devices used to take and measure the votes.
Right. I don't know if this act covers those things particularly, but clearly there's vulnerabilities there. So I would say this act is consistent with um, the whole theme of immigration, right? Illegal immigration. I think it's front and center because we, whether you're Democrat or Republican, you have to admit we've had an influx of illegal immigration in this country over the last whatever 5-6 years, right?
Yep.
Particularly under the Biden administration post COVID. I don't think there's any argument in regards to that. Anyone who's telling you otherwise is now the actual numbers. Who knows what the actual numbers are, but they're in the millions, right? So I think the idea is, well, now we've got all these illegals here, and we've always had illegals and immigrants, new immigrants in this country over time. But I think, given the levels that we're at, I think there's a concern that they will start to vote. But the question is, have they started to vote? Um,
They
and
have started
it,
to vote in state elections,
wait a second,
local
which
elections.
local elections? We
Yes.
could we could go over that. I did some research. If we want to do that now, they are allowed to vote in certain areas. In particularly, I think San Francisco, Oakland allow them to vote in school board elections. I think Washington D.C. has probably opened it up more than most places, and I think there's some municipalities in. I don't think there are any statewide elections where they're allowed to vote, but I think on the local level, um, in a limited number of cases, they've been allowed to vote. So, but the SAVE Act is dealing with federal elections, particularly not state or local elections. Although I guess when you register to vote, you don't register multiple times for
Different.
state
Yeah.
versus municipal. You're just registered, and typically you're registered, locally, right?
Yep.
Um, you have your local county election or local, depending on
City,
each state sets it. Each state has the ability to set it up differently.
alderman.
So the
Yep.
question is, we've got illegals, but I think I did a quick Google search on, is there rampant illegal non-citizen voting? I guess we could call it non-citizen instead of illegal um, voting. Um, and the first thing that came up was Mormon Women for Ethical Government. That was the first website that Google gave me when I said, "Are non-citizens voting?"
That's odd.
Which is interesting. And they point out, that this fear has been present for hundreds of years. Actually, voter registration itself didn't really become a thing nationwide until after the Civil War. You used to kind of just show up to the polls and you either had somebody vouch. Now, who was showing up? Mostly white men, right,
Yep.
at that point, prior to the Civil War.
Landowners.
And
They had to be
so,
landowners, didn't
and
they?
s- I think originally, yes. I don't know how far that carried into. I think it eventually became looser in the early 1800s. But basically, you either had to produce some type of document or have somebody vouch for you, kind of thing, which is very clubby, very, very white
I
privilege there. Let's just
I
say.
saw a woman, or at least who I believe to be a woman, post on Twitter or X earlier today, stating that she'd be willing to go back on the amendment. Was it the 19th that allowed women to vote? She'd give up
Sure.
her voting rights if she didn't have to pay taxes anymore.
Good luck. Good luck with that.
I thought that was pretty funny.
That was pretty funny. Yep. So it's not something we've had for our whole history that you've actually had to register to vote. Um, Now, by the Constitution, uh, states there's an elections clause in the Constitution that says state legislatures set the times, places, and manners by which senators and representatives are elected. So there is a clause in the Constitution that directs that to the states. And the Supreme Court has historically viewed that pretty broadly and given states the ability to do many things, right? In regards to setting their own standards, either be it um, mail-in voting, absentee voting, all the time limits for when that needs to be in. We don't have national standards in regards to that, and the states pretty much determine uh, what happens within the elections, even though they're ultimately federal elections,
So
right?
if the states at a local level, let's just say San Francisco, wanted to allow only people from that lived in Rome, Italy, to vote, it would be completely legal.
What was that again?
San Francisco said, in our
Yes,
next election, we're going to allow
right.
people from Rome, Italy, that live in Rome, Italy, to vote. In our election in San Francisco, that'd be completely legal.
I think so. I mean, clearly they're allowing non-citizens to vote
Yep.
in their school board. I don't think. I mean, the Constitution deals with federal represent. So I think if somebody lives in the city, um, and the city decides to let those people vote, I don't think that would be unconstitutional. I don't know if any of these other ones have been
What if
constitutionally
they,
challenged. I didn't go
going
back.
off on a rail here, but what if they just say you have to be born in an odd year to vote? Is that legal?
Is that constitutional? Are you
Yeah,
saying?
it's a constitutional. States'
If you're
rights.
looking at if you're looking at a particular locality election, I don't think it would be. I mean, somebody would challenge it clearly,
But you're
but
not
uh,
discriminating based on age
yeah,
or
there
any
might
other.
be an equal treatment under the law or something. There might be another area within the Constitution that you could say um, this would
What
apply.
I'm getting at here
Uh,
is this opens up a door to farm your votes, to tailor your
what
votes.
what's opening up? What are you describing?
Uh,
We're talking about the
let's take
SAVE
the
Act, which
power. Yeah,
is
well, I'm just saying the powers that be, and we'll say San Francisco, not to pick on them, but I already said San Francisco before. They want to stay in power, and they know that they have potentially supporters of their ideology in a particular region or area of the world. So if San Francisco wants to say, we're also going to let Chicago vote in our elections, there's nothing to stop that. And it just strengthens, and they get to strengthen their base, tailor their votes. They'll never leave
well,
power.
gerrymandering is allowed on a federal level, so you're talking about sort of the same thing on a local level. So I don't see why that would be an issue, especially
Yeah,
since the
all
people
I'm
of that
getting at here is
locality
you
determine
see
it.
there could be a real problem. So if Tennessee decides, or Texas, that the state's getting just a little too purple for their tastes, Tennessee now is going to go ahead and let the rural counties of Texas also vote in Tennessee's local elections. It gets a little shady there, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Now, I don't. If you remember, during the 1960s, the Voters' Rights Act was passed, which kind of put the pressure on states and localities to kind of not discriminate, I would say, against certain people. And I think the Supreme Court has kind of backed away from that in
Yeah.
recent years, taken away those protections. So I would say, from the conservative standpoint, they're pretty good with whatever the localities decide. So when you're speaking of liberal places like San Francisco, that in this case are allowing non-citizens to vote in school board elections, which makes sense because they probably have citizen daughters because of birthright citizenship. They probably have citizens' children who are citizens, right? And they might be non-citizens, but they should have a say in how their children are educated, right? That sort of makes sense to me in that particular case. So you're creating a scenario that doesn't exist, and I'd rather go back and look at what the SAVE Act is really trying to do here,
Fair.
which is so the SAVE Act is trying to prevent non-citizens from voting in federal elections, right? That's really what they're interested in, both presidential and legislative elections. Um, and the question is, can they do that? Can they take the eligibility side of things and make it a federal law, right? Um, there are, and this is not, and it's happened before. And we've had acts that, and it actually was in 1996 that an act was passed we've got laws on the books. So 1996, let me see here. During President Clinton's administration, we passed. Actually, there several passed during Clinton's administration. The National Voter Registration Act, which required individuals registering to vote anywhere in the United States had to attest under penalty of perjury that they are a U.S. citizen. Now, I don't know how these local board votes allowing non-citizens to vote jive with that. I don't know. Then there was the Illegal Immigration Reform Act of 1996, and it makes it explicit that it's not legal for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. And no states allow non-citizens to vote in federal elections. So we've got laws on the books. It is illegal for a non-citizen to vote in a federal election.
It's also illegal to
So
murder people.
that's true. That's true, Bob.
It still happens.
It still happens. Okay, so how often does it happen? So I think if you look at the evidence, you could Google yourself any reliable study, and I think President Trump tried to find instances during the 2020 election, and they didn't find anything. They had a whole study. So various states have gone through their records recently. Utah, 2026, went through 2 million registered voters, found 27 non-citizens instances of registered
But you
voters.
said it.
27.
This is about trust, right?
Wait.
It's about trust.
Wait. Let me go through. Let me go through the number. Georgia, 8.2 million. They found 20 non-citizens registered and only 9 cast ballots, and they've turned those over to prosecution. And they should be prosecuted. Although it's sometimes often hard to tell whether people did it on purpose. They have to knowingly do it. Some people don't know, believe it or not. Non-citizens might not know all the laws in this country.
What's not being
So
captured
one more. Ohio went through their voting records. They found 521 during a 4-year period, but only one person was ultimately charged with. And so the federal books have fines, prison sentences, deportation, revocation of legal status in this country.
You have to.
Why would a non-citizen want to vote?
Just because they weren't charged doesn't mean that.
Well, they went through the voting records, Bob.
Right, but
there are not non-citizens
there
there.
is such a thing as ballot harvesting, right?
That's a totally different issue.
So how many hundreds and thousands of ballots are being sent to a single address?
This is not being. This act is not dealing with that. This act is saying non-citizens are voting, and we need to make sure everyone is a citizen who registers.
Non-citizens may be registered to vote, and then their ballot is cast by somebody else, and they couldn't prove that citizen specifically cast the vote.
Well, you're making up cases.
Well, I'm making up scenarios.
I mean, you need to cite specific cases that have been prosecuted. I'm sure there's more than 50% of the election law lawyers in this country have looked at registration, have looked at voters. I don't see anything in the newspaper that indicates that this is a widespread issue. Nothing. If you can provide that, please provide that. I've paid attention to it. Like I said, there's massive funding that would have resulted in finding some of this stuff. It's not there.
Yeah, I tend to believe or agree with you that it's not swinging elections. I do.
Okay.
I think showing voter ID and illegal voting are not requiring voter ID is not just because of illegal voting. It's also because of things like ballot harvesting. If you're going to vote, they want to make sure that it's you voting and your ballot not being harvested and sent off to the voting station.
I don't think this act particularly addresses that piece of it. This is, like I said, voter eligibility. How you gather votes. like you're talking mail-in ballots and
Yeah,
other
yeah,
ways of getting
yeah.
votes, which I think he's also trying to do through executive orders. Because I think he needs to do it that way because I don't think those are necessarily constitutional because I think the Constitution allows Congress to set up eligibility requirements, such as age. We have a national age to vote,
Yeah.
right? You can't say you're 12. So
Should be 35
this
probably.
this deals with eligibility. So I think it will be constitutional on that standpoint. I think the unconstitutional aspect of this will be that effectively this is a poll tax, which um, which the Supreme Court doesn't like, or historically hasn't liked. I mean, if this ever passes, we'll see what the current Supreme Court says
So why
about it.
hasn't
But
it passed?
so it hasn't passed because they don't have the votes in the Senate. They need Democrats to vote for it,
Yeah.
right?
So from what I understand, the Republicans and Democrats alike are afraid it's going to make the midterms very complicated. And from my perspective, and everything we talk about, I think kind of has the same story. It's more that nobody wants to do anything. They're all afraid of losing their power, and that's what matters most to them. 80 some percent of the company or the country want this law to pass.
Who does?
America. I'm
America wants its law to pass.
percent, a little more,
Did you look that up?
83%. Actually, what I looked up is they favor voter ID, not the SAVE Act specifically.
Okay, so that's not the
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah.
I do you have to show an ID when you go to the polls?
I do believe I do here in Tennessee. Yes.
So do
Yep.
I. I went a couple weeks ago to vote in the primary, and they asked for my ID. I showed my Wisconsin driver's license. Guess what? Showing the Wisconsin driver's license under the SAVE Act wouldn't work.
You need a
It wouldn't.
national ID.
I wouldn't be
Yeah.
allowed to show it.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I couldn't register with my real
Yeah, it's
ID.
ridiculous.
Right. Come
Yeah.
on. And you listen to Fox and you listen to Newsmax, and I've seen these reports. They're like, well, you got to show an ID to eat the an Olive Garden for the if you get
Breadsticks.
a pasta
Yeah.
past or whatever that they sell, and I'm like, come on, that's being that's being falsely presented, right? Olive Garden's looking for any kind of photo ID, right? Any kind of ID that you're the person who's on the
People
pass.
should be
You could
ID'd if they have that
you could
photo
put a
pass,
bus
so they can
ID.
be
You could have a
criticized.
college ID. This is not that. This is basically either a passport or a birth certificate. And going down, not doing it online, going down to an election office with the documentation to register. And if your birth certificate doesn't match your new name, if you're a woman, you're going to have to get a marriage license. So I don't know how many people have those documents readily available. I don't think I have a birth certificate at the top. I mean, I'd have to dig for it. Now I do have a passport, and I looked at how many Americans actually have passports. Want to guess that percentage? It's actually higher than I thought.
18%.
It's actually roughly 50%. That seems extremely high, but that's what it said. 50% of people have passports.
Okay, not
So
bad.
I would say those are a certain demographic group generally, right?
Yep.
Um, so so this just adds another layer of documentation. I think the poll tax issue comes in that there's a cost to do all these things, right? If you want a birth certificate or if you need to get a passport's probably a couple $100 now or something,
How
right?
much pork is in the
Gotta go.
SAVE Act? Have you investigated that? Because I bet there's a
I
lot.
have not. There could be. There could be. But the question is, you're putting all these requirements on localities too. Can you imagine the line to get a birth
Yeah.
certificate, right? Or to get a marriage license?
Hmm.
These places
Or,
aren't heavily staffed to handle this
or a
volume,
driver's
right?
license or a passport.
Right. Now, it's a little unclear. I saw several things whether if you're already registered, whether you'd have to go through and re-register. Um, they didn't. I think regarding the current election, I don't think they would make people re-register. but I would imagine at some point you'd have to go through it because it wouldn't seem fair that if you just got in before this that
Anytime you move a
you would.
state, for instance.
Right. Or you have to, yeah, if you move or if your name changes,
Yeah.
then you'd have to re-register and you'd have to go through this whole process. So I like the idea. I do like the idea that you need to show some ID at, even though I don't think there's a problem, right? I do think some level of ID should be required, right? Um, just so we can, like you said, it's more of a perception issue. And if we had a national requirement, this is actually where I'm coming out. Even though I think blatantly this act is not to accomplish this. I think this act is to suppress votes in certain areas. I do think generally, like you said,
Support it.
people support the idea that you should be have to show
Yeah, I
something.
think
But I think the requirements of this act
it needs
are
to be. It should be
higher
pared down.
than it
If they
needs to
really
be.
wanted to pass it, it would
Right.
be a series of one page or one paragraph bills. Right. That's it. Voter ID, valued government issued ID required to vote. I kind of understand the federal thing because California is handing driver's license, even CDLs to illegals that can't even read, right? New York's doing the same thing. So I can understand the need or want for federal over state. That makes logical sense to me. But yes, a bill, ID required to vote. You want to have it and create a national election day holiday. Fine. Makes sense. Series of one liners, easy to understand, no pork. That's where we should be.
Well, they created this whole real ID thing.
Yeah, that should be good enough. Well,
You
I mean,
think that should be good
well, that
enough,
and that
right?
that
I remember getting it, and it wasn't easy.
yeah.
I had to show my passport and
The
several other
truth is, if you
things.
have a real ID, you probably all you need to do is show your face because they're using AI everywhere right now. And the minute you walk past one of these AI cameras, they know who you are.
Well, if it's good enough to get on a plane,
Yep.
shouldn't it be good enough to
Yeah.
vote? I guess.
Yeah. When's the last time you
So,
went through an airport? Right. You show that real ID now, and they put you in front of a camera. Camera looks at you, says, "Yep,
right.
you're you," and then you move on.
Well, I even towards that, I wouldn't have. I know there's privacy issues and whatnot. I wouldn't have a problem with biometric
I
data,
was going
right?
to say the same thing.
I'm like that's kind of if I was in Europe over the summer and they're taking pictures and fingerprints as you're walking through. I mean, that's kind of where it's headed because that's the best way to determine you are who you are, right?
And that's it.
I mean, otherwise
And it's
it's
free. Your
you've got
fingerprints
a
are free.
picture on a. I mean, otherwise you can do anything unless unless you're John Reacher or something. You can't change your fingerprints or your eyes or whatever they're focused in on. So those are distinguishing characteristics that, um, even though we don't like a national database or whatever, I think we've given up the ship on privacy in general already. So to secure elections greater, I wouldn't have a problem, having to put my fingerprint down.
Yeah, I agree. Quick and
Um,
easy.
so I think this act as it's constructed, I think to me it's obvious where they were headed, and it's an overreach. And I think if you really cared about voting, I would like it paired with something that allows people to vote easier. If you're going to require an ID, then create something else, or like I said, biometric that's easy to obtain, is costless, and then open up. You know, I always thought we should have a national election day. It should be a federal holiday, at least for the federal
I'm all
elections.
for it.
That way, no one could say that they have a problem getting off work. Everyone has plenty of time to head to the polls, and given how we wave the flag and say democracy and everything, to kind of limit to make it a hassle to vote when we wrap ourselves in the flag is kind of an insult to our
I do
democracy. So
think that that federal election day may very well, though, end up resulting in a higher amount of the average, I guess, well-to-do voter voting. Because if you're
Well,
living
whatever. I
paycheck
mean,
to
whoever
paycheck
shows
and
up.
you're working at McDonald's, you still need that paycheck, even if you get the extra money. Right now, it's time and a half or
But
whatever.
everything closes down. No,
Yeah.
McDonald's can't be open. It's a federal
Well,
holiday.
like McDonald's, Thanksgiving's a
What?
federal holiday.
Well, you
It's
mandate
still
it.
open.
You mandate that they have to give their employees off the time off and pay them.
That might not be legal. Is there any holiday where it's illegal to have people come in as long as you pay them for their service?
No, I don't
Yeah,
think.
that's a little harder to do.
Well, that usually that's at the choice of
The individual.
the
Yeah.
individual, right?
But I don't know. I don't know. You could even on Christmas. In a court of
If you
law,
make somebody come
if you
in
made
on a
somebody
federal
come
holiday,
in on Christmas, you might lose the freedom of religion case. But from the average citizen, a 2 or 3 year court case isn't going to be worth the hassle on that.
yeah, I mean that might be more on religious grounds because I don't think federal holidays are mandated other than for federal uh, offices and regulated
Yeah,
institutions, I
yeah.
guess.
Especially like a manufacturing
Uh,
facility, if they got demand, they're gonna be running.
but we could at least make it a holiday to
Yeah,
begin with,
you may
which
not
it's
be able
not.
to force people in, but you can heavily encourage them and do things like pay them time and a
Right.
half or triple
I think
time.
that would cover a good number of people. Uh, that that would not be an excuse, right? So again, anti-save act. I don't have a problem requiring some ID um, to prove that you are who you say you are, and to register to vote, you should have to provide some level of documentation that you are a citizen of this country. But I still think it's a solution in search of a problem at this point. Um, so I don't think it's something
It
that
sounds like it's written.
should
It
be
sounds like it's
passed.
written. If all you say is completely accurate, and I have no reason to doubt you, it's written not to pass.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just a political thing that Trump's setting it up to say, which I wouldn't doubt for the midterm, saying, well, we tried to pass it, the Democrats, and now they
Yep.
cheated, right?
Yep. Or the rhinos.
Right. Even though there's no evidence of it, we can at least say that, well, we tried to save the country from this, and now our election's been stolen, and they didn't vote for it. So good luck with that. Let's talk about the other thing, which I think we've talked a little bit about before, but never really gotten into it. And this is the amazing thing, Bob. As I was researching the Stock Act and the Stop Insider Trading Act, I realized how recent these acts are and how long Congress has been around. Up until 2012, there was no law that said lawmakers couldn't trade on inside
Of
information.
course not. It's illegal for
That,
companies to do.
it's illegal for
Yeah.
everyone else. There was not a law that said Nancy Pelosi, after she learned, that a company was going to get a subsidy in a closed door hearing, couldn't go out and trade on that information. 2012.
Yeah.
Crazy. So that was the Stock Act. So in 2012, it made insider trading by lawmakers illegal, and it was obviously illegal for the rest of us way before that.
They're still
Crazy.
voting on insider information, though. Nobody's being charged with it.
So that gets to the new act, right? And the new act is called the Stop Insider Trading
Yep.
Act, or again, the Stock Act. This is another acronym. Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act was the Stock Act of
And if I'm not
2012.
mistaken, it still excludes the president, right?
Right. We are talking exclusively here. Prohibits members and staff. This was the original Stock Act of 2012. Prohibits members and staff of Congress from using non-public information from their official positions for personal benefits. clarified insider trading laws applied to members of Congress, and there was a 45-day reporting period of trades. Critics have argued that this is sort of weak. It's not being really enforced. It's hard to. Basically, insider trading is difficult to enforce to begin with, because despite the Martha Stewart, the famous Martha Stewart case, it's hard to prove when people had information. I think generally you have to say it's material, non-public information.
It's also
right?
hard to prove that
they traded specifically because of that information, right? So you have to prove those two things, and those are often, it happened, but to go into a court of law and prove it is another matter, right? And especially if you're going after a big fish, you kind of have to have the case locked down. So it's got to be pretty obvious. So therefore, enforcement is weak. So what do we do? So the Stop Insider Trading Act, I like a lot. The new proposal doesn't deal with insider trading at all. It just says they're not allowed to trade. And this has passed the House actually in July 2026. It passed 232 to 198. There was a small group of Democrats, and guess why there was only a small group of Democrats for this act, Bob?
Because the other ones didn't vote.
No, because the Republicans attached the SAVE Act to this bill.
That's that. Yeah, there you go.
You gotta love it. You gotta love Congress, right?
Yep.
Like you said, they're killing the act. Yep. It's political theater.
The Republicans. Yes.
Right. If they really wanted to stop insider trading, they wouldn't have attached this poison pill to it. They knew the Democrats weren't going to vote for it, right? So they all could say, well, I voted for... And my congressman, Derek Van Orden, he's advertising... Most of his ads are that he voted for this Insider Trading Act, this Stop Insider Trading Act.
That's awesome.
Knowing full well
pass.
That it's just political theater, that there's no way it would pass. So that's why, but it still passed the House and now it's stuck in the Senate. So what does this bill do? And I like it. It bans members of Congress, spouses, dependent children. I would say not only dependent children, how about all children? But dependent children from purchasing new stocks or publicly traded securities. Period. It requires 7 to 14 day public notice to sell any existing stocks. So if you're elected to Congress and you have a stock portfolio, you got to let the public know when you sell it, but you can't purchase new stuff, right? You can't purchase and sell. You can't trade. It's a ban on trading, basically, for you, your spouses, and your children.
Yep.
Perfect,
Sounds
right?
All right. Nice and easy.
There you go. So,
you know what? As a compromise,
so call your congressperson and tell them to take out the SAVE provisions.
And I don't think this is the end game, but I would even settle for, if you make a trade as a congressman, you need to declare it publicly on your website immediately, or just ahead of time. I am buying 100 shares of Amazon at 5 p.m. today, or open tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't even like disclosure. It's just like, don't ban it. You can't trade. Now, the question is, will they get around it somehow?
Of course they will. There's always a loophole.
But I think it will stop a great majority of it, right? I mean, you could.
Well,
I guess you could. Your uncle can set up a corporation, and you can.
What I like about it, honestly, is I think it will create a lot more turnover in Congress. So there's less incentive for these lifetime.
You're absolutely right.
Mitch McConnell's.
If it's not, I think there should be a sacrifice to serve the country,
Absolutely.
right? It shouldn't be something that you use to your personal benefit. It should be public service, right? That's the idea. I would even be okay with paying them a bit more money, right? Throw them I don't know what they make now, $200,000.
Last I remember was $175 a year for
right. That seems a little. To me, that seems low, right?
With the risk of the job, you're probably right.
That's middle manager in a company or something like that, right? I mean, these are when you think of pro athletes and,
Well, keep in mind,
and things like, I mean, these are fairly, there's a fairly
yeah,
small
keep in
number,
mind though, in
right? There's,
addition to that money, right, their travel's paid for, their extra apartment, et
yeah,
cetera, is
but
paid
yeah,
for,
there
their
are
food.
perks. There are perks, but again, I just saw a cornerback on the Seattle Seahawks signed for 4 years for $125 million.
Hmm.
Do I think somebody running who's becomes a congressional? I mean, there's only what 500 and some odd people in
Hmm.
Congress. Um, that's a pretty exclusive. It's probably fewer of them than professional football players, right? If about the same. Not, yeah, I would say definitely
So
there's
maybe
fewer
we
of
should
them.
be states' rights.
Not that they're
Maybe
good.
you should look at it from a states' rights perspective. Let Illinois decide
What's that?
if they want their congressman doing insider trading or not. And let Illinois decide what their congressman should be making. And Illinois should pay them
Yeah,
rather than the United States.
yeah. I don't know if that's something the states can control or not. That seems like a federal budgetary issue or control of Congress. Then you've got all different rules for different representatives. But I don't mind paying them more. Like I said, if it's 500,000, if it's 600,000, I'd rather like. But as you said, it should be a sacrifice. You shouldn't be getting wealthy, and by making it a sacrifice, you'll have more turnover, right? Even if they go to work for a company and then lobby or do whatever, at least you're creating that turnover in Congress through people saying I need to go elsewhere. I can't become a multimillionaire in Congress and do
Yep.
the
Yeah, and I think initially
uh,
probably the first year to 45 years, something like that, year to 5 years, they probably aren't doing that. So when they get the hang of it and what's legal and what's not, and they start to get to coaching and they realize, oh, I can do all this.
I think it's also when they get seniority and they get
Hmm.
committee assignments, and I think a lot happens in the committee
Yeah.
level, right? Um, and if you get a chairmanship of a key committee, you can you could definitely get legislation passed, which then happens to coincide with insider knowledge and also you know dollars rolling your way for campaigns and stuff like that, which then just keep you in power. So I think you're right. After you get over a certain hump, be it a couple terms or 3 or 4 terms or whatever, you then solidify your position, and it just sort of feeds on itself at that point.
Doesn't sound half bad.
So I like this act. I think everyone should say they should drop the Save Act provisions and go through and pass it. Just think what if people saw them do this, what kind of confidence, not confidence, but it would make people feel a little bit
Trust,
better, right?
again.
Right, about our country, that like, oh, they did this. They passed a law that limited. Now, obviously, some of it is probably window dressing, but if you read the act and you're like, well, it does limit it and it's going to prevent some of this, everyone will be like, okay, this is one step. That's what we need. We need to build this kind of reform movement. We need not all at once, but little things like that. Or that might be viewed as a big thing. It's like, okay, we're doing something to clean up our government, right? We're doing something positive. Um, so I wish people would pay more attention to this stuff, and this is kind of why we're trying to talk about it, because I think if there's real pressure and if we demand this stuff more for our
We'll
representatives,
get a desired
do
outcome.
think I do
Term
think we could
limits
get
without
it.
term limits.
If not, we might as well
Yeah.
give up, right? If we don't think it's possible when we vote that we can influence stuff like this, or if we call our Congress people and tell them, have you ever called your congressman?
I have multiple
You have.
times, multiple
They say
congressmen.
it's fairly effective.
I always end up
Um,
in voicemail,
they do,
and I never get a call back.
but some staff member does go through it
Yeah.
and record it. I mean, Deb's been involved in, especially in the state of Illinois, lobbying people, and they do get that information. I mean, they don't ignore it. They do have staff that clarifies we've got this many calls on this topic, and I mean, whether they ultimately pay attention to it is another matter, but it does get in
Yeah.
front of them. It's not like it goes
I
into a
send
black hole.
emails,
So,
and sometimes I'll send it
right, emails,
from
and
my company email, depending on what the subject is, and sometimes I'll send it from my
yeah,
personal email.
yeah, I've done it too. I mean, any type of
Yeah.
communication like that is better than nothing. I mean, you're voicing your opinion to your elected representative, and to remain silent, they might think you don't
Yeah.
care. And by stating that you do care, um, you're just at least communicating to them. So those are the two things I wanted to cover. You got anything else, Bob?
That's all I wanted to talk about. That's it.
That's all you want to talk about today? I thought you had something else that you were dying to
Did we
talk about.
cover Dolly yet?
We covered Dolly. We didn't cover Treasury yields, but
Yeah, AI. I'm always on the AI
that,
subject. We need.
you're always on the AI. Um, was there any recent AI news? You sent me something about medical breakthroughs. I didn't know if that was AI related, or I
Yeah.
didn't
So there
delve
have
into
been a
that
few
yet.
medical breakthroughs in the AI space. One, I believe it was Moderna. Their stock popped quite a bit. They had a AI breakthrough when it came to melanoma or skin cancer.
Oh,
More or less a
okay.
vaccine that once you have melanoma, the vaccine has proven, seems to be proven. I think it's in level 3 tests now, or round 3 tests, to stop it from coming back, which is awesome. There's also been some recent breakthroughs in heart disease. What that is, in short, is shutting off a gene that that is in people that often have high levels of the bad cholesterol. And what's really cool about shutting off that gene is that for some reason in individuals it creates a different problem. They can just turn it back on, and AI help them to get there, right? So we're really getting close now to some amazing medical
Crazy stuff.
breakthroughs.
Yeah, I just read something in regards to pancreatic cancer, which is usually a death sentence.
Yeah,
That there have been some advances in the last couple of weeks in regards to expanding the longevity and of people with pancreatic
yeah, they're starting
cancer.
to get to a
So
point where they can
they do
design
say
it.
all this stuff is
They
on the horizon.
they can design it specifically
I've
for
heard.
you and for your cancer and for your situation. And and that's the thing is every cancer really is unique from a genetic perspective, just like people are. And so now being able to design it for your specific case is, it's just it's a breakthrough.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought about that today after you sent the article, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be turning 60 shortly, and I've heard that if you can make it another 5 years, you might live to be 100, and then I'm like, well, maybe I need to go back to work.
Yeah,
No, but another thing I was thinking is, okay, these advances are there, so then we've obviously got a crisis in healthcare costs, right? So how do these advances become affordable and to everyone, right? That's that's
yeah.
that's always the catch
So
22,
you
and you're hoping that we get there through AI efficiency and the kind of these advances in technology, but usually initially technology is expensive, right? The therapies initially are
but think
quite
about it: one shot
expensive, and
in your arm or two shots in your arm versus
yeah, but a shot could be $10,000,
multiple
right?
radiation and chemotherapy, and then the other damage it causes to
Right.
you, and you got to have treatments to treat the
No,
treatment.
I
Yeah,
agree. I mean, it
yeah,
sounds, you know, I mean, what we do with chemotherapy and radiation is almost medieval, right? People who get that, and it's a great thing that um, either AI or other medical advances can eliminate some of that pain and suffering, and and hopefully the costs of doing that are well below um, some of our antiquated technologies that we really haven't advanced on.
on,
Um,
on the
so
other hand, though, right, with this comes other interesting things like these AI companies that are creating all these new models. We had a company recently, their new model broke in and hacked their own networks,
Oops.
right? And now one company in particular has actually said, as I've heard from people in the know, that we're going to stop developing a new model for now, and we're all hands on deck to secure our network and get it to where it needs to be before we move on with something new, right?
Well,
So
I guess that's a good thing.
it's a double-edged sword. The world is going to change fast. You're going to have AI out there looking for vulnerabilities, AI authorized to fix those vulnerabilities without human intervention, and it's going to happen. And I think maybe at some point you get it where it's operating so well that it's not noticeable. Yeah. The thing that happens is if you make a small change to your network or your software, you just need a bunch of agents all of a sudden looking at it and saying, how does this change affect everything else? And it's all done in the background and it'll be great. Getting there is going to be a challenge. And it's really interesting because if you think about it, okay, one company was smart enough to say, we need to stop, we need to figure this out. At the same time, there's some evidence out there that some of the cheap Chinese models, the systems are working and waiting very much like our expensive models here, which tells you what it is, right? It's our expensive models here that were stolen.
Backward engineered or whatever they call
exactly. So, yeah, it's an interesting world, but I don't think we're talking 3 to 5 years. I think we're talking 1 year, and the world's going to be a whole new place. I really do.
A whole new world. Isn't that a Disney song? A whole new world.
So we're getting feedback.
Want
Do
to
we need to
join
be
me?
singing for every show?
You want to join me? It's a brand. Is it a brand new world? A brand.
It's a whole new
It's
world.
one of the Disney.
Let me go get my
Is
Ariel.
it Moana or
that's Ariel. It's a little
that's
mermaid.
Ariel?
It's Ariel. Yeah.
Are the girls asleep?
They are asleep.
All right. we can have them guest on sing on our podcast.
I can.
Would be better than us singing.
My wife's asleep too. I could try to stick the microphone in her face and wake her up, and
I'm sure she'd appreciate that.
She'll love it. Yeah.
All right. Well, that'll be all the singing on this podcast, but we'll bring a song next time. All right, Bob. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Bye.